Welcome. You've reached the Solidarity Economy discussion series, co-hosted by Art.Coop and Grantmakers in the Arts. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and take a moment to play a song um, while we are all joining from the waiting room. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it to Daniel Park from Obvious Agency.
It's nice to hear your voice again. I've waited all day long, even wrote a song for you. It's strange the way you make me feel. With just a word or two, I'd like to do the same for you. It's nice to hear you say hello. And how are things with you? I love you. But very soon it's time to go. An office job to do while I'm here writing songs for you. Strange how a phone call can change your day, take you away, away from the feeling of being alone. Bless the telephone.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daniel. So again, welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I'm going to do a brief introduction. I'm going to then hand it to my colleague from Art.Coop, Marina Lopez. And then we are going to get to hear from Carlos Uriona from Double Edge Theater and Daniel Park from Obvious Agency. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, is that working? Okay, great. I'm Eddie Torres from Grantmakers in the Arts. Use he, him pronouns. I'm coming to you from the unceded land of the Lenape Wappinger people. For those of you who can't see me, I'm a cisgendered 50-year-old man with light brown skin and dark hair and eyes, wearing a dark blazer. I have a Zoom background of an orange blanket fort behind me. I want to go ahead and just put today's discussion into context. Grantmakers in the Arts is experimenting with new work to basically make real, make tangible for folks the recommendations of the report that we commissioned, Solidarity, Not Charity, Arts and Culture, Grant Making in the Solidarity Economy, which was a report by the folks at Art.Coop. And it is the next chapter in work that Grantmakers in the Arts has been doing on the solidarity economy for a few years, thanks to our Vice President, Nadia Alokta, and our Senior Program Manager, Sherilyn Seeley. This is our work to take the work that we've been sharing from the realm of broadcast and information agency, information sharing, to something that's more high touch, something that is more hands-on, and something that's more artist-led. So with that said, this is part of a series. I'm going to be sending the hyperlink to the rest of the series in the chat so that you're able to sign up for the other two upcoming discussions. And also going to be sharing in the chat a Google Doc in which you can share your contact information with Daniel and Carlos so that you can continue to receive updates on their work, the work that they're sharing now, and more work that's coming up. Now I am delighted to hand it over to my colleague from Art.Coop, Marina Lopez. Marina.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Is everyone seeing my screen here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. As Eddie said, my name is Marina Lopez. I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling in today from the unceded land of the Wiyot people in far Northern California. I have olive skin and dark hair that's pulled away from my face. And I have some epic wallpaper in my background. I've been co-organizing with Art.Coop with Nati Linares and Caroline Woolard since August of 2021. As Eddie mentioned, they co-authored the Solidarity Not Charity report, which jump-started Art.Coop. And we'll share that link in the chat if you haven't had a chance to read it yet. Yes, here we are, session 3 of 5 of this amazing series. We've been so excited by all the interest and the folks showing up. So thank you. Eddie will circulate a sign-up sheet. Please sign up to stay connected to the artists who are presenting at these series and learning more about the work that they're doing. We have 2 more in this series on March 8th, and then the last one on April 13th. So today we're going to hear from Daniel Park from Obvious Agency and Carlos Oriona of Double Edge Theater. They'll be sharing with us about the incredible work that they're doing. I'm so excited. Yeah, and next month on March 8th, we have Intelligent Mischief, Aisha Shillingford, where we'll learn about ways to support Black utopias. Also incredible work. And so you can find all these events at art.coop. Art.Coop exists to grow the solidarity economy movement. And we do this by centering systems change work that's led by artists and culture bearers. As Mwako Agbo says, it's about community ownership and democratic governance for political, cultural, and economic power. So in other words, who owns and who decides? The Sustainable Economies Law Center, which Gregory Jackson from the last series is a part of, they have this great prompt. And so I want each of you to ask yourselves this: how will you spread power and spread wealth and then root it in hyperlocal community? At Art.Coop, we're doing this when we connect cultural innovators across silos in the solidarity economy movement. When we amplify research, inspiration, resources, job listings in the solidarity economy and events that lift up this work. Shout out to Nati and Sonia for holding it down. They do an amazing job. We also do this when we move money to multi-year, self-determined and systems change efforts that are led by artists. And when we do things like this hour, we study together to really practice ways of spreading power and wealth and rooting it in our communities. Because most people, we don't have the experience of democratic decision-making at work, at home, online, or in school. So study is really required to ensure that as a cultural, we learn the skills of cooperation and democratic governance, and then we practice them. And a scan of the arts and culture landscape in 2021 reveals a growing demand for education and training about cooperative forms of enterprise. Because as artists, we are in many ways the original gig workers, and we're also often the freelancers with the least access to equitable working environments. So we're seeking out these models that can fill our need for generative and democratically run work and creative spaces that are rooted in our communities. So why is this so much excitement about cooperatives? Because we know that the arts and culture sector is huge, with $32 billion in exports, which is 5% of the GDP, and that 38% of BIPOC-owned businesses in the US are actually in the creative economy. Yet only 1% of musicians actually capture 60% of all concert revenue, and 20 artists account for 64% of global sales for living artists. So the impact of more cooperatives in arts and culture would be really, really big, because then creatives would be able to capture the value that they generate with the work that they're creating. So an example is that 59% of people employed at worker co-ops identify as people of color. And worker owners have 22% higher median income from wages than their non-owner peers. So if every business in the US became worker owned, the median wealth of the bottom half of Americans would increase by 4 times. That's an increase of 4 times of the median wealth. In a recent talk Daniel gave, he quoted one of his collaborators, cultural strategist and performer Ariel Julia Brown, who said, "Can art be liberatory if it is made within oppressive systems?" And I love this quote, and it feels so fitting for today's session, where we're going to learn about what it looks like when artists own the means of their creative production through democratic governance and cooperatism. And then we're also going to hear about the incredible impact, the economic, the social, the cultural benefits that has on not just the artists doing the work, but the community at large that they live and play and worship within. Because as we build these new but old systems, we need the power of embodied art practice, like the performing arts, to teach us to feel deeply so that when we arrive, we know what liberation feels like. And so when Nati and Caroline were interviewing over 100 people for the report, they heard about these 4 major shifts that need to occur in grant making specifically to support systems change towards racial and economic justice, among them being this internal work. Things that can look like getting data about inequities in your existing allocation of funding, learning about acknowledging and repairing histories of harm enacted by institutions, and then setting internal and external benchmarks for practices of repair. At Art.Coop just last year, we experienced firsthand the firm but loving way in which Double-Edged Theater and their partner Okateo Cultural Center called us in to acknowledge and repair. And we're super grateful for their mentorship. It's a really beautiful relationship that we're cultivating. It can also look like engaging in embodied leadership, learning about distributed leadership models, and also joining peer networks or giving circles that support this kind of transformative work. So Obvious Agency and Double-Edged Theater, who you'll hear from today, are both arts cooperatives that do leadership development, bringing wisdom from the solidarity economy movements to the practice of art making that they share with the public. Daniel brings in wisdom from the US Federation of Worker Co-ops to Obvious Agency and advocates for artists within his work at the US Federation. And Carlos and Double-Edged Theater offer the Art and Survival program and contribute directly to the Land Back movement to build the field of art and solidarity economy while also running an arts co-op and giving stolen land back. I know that you will get a sense of the depth of their commitment, their incredible passion for the work that they do, and all of the wisdom and integrity that they bring into it when you hear from them today. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to pass this on to Carlos. First, we're going to share a video that will give each of you a really beautiful idea of the breadth and the impact of their work. So I am going to pull that up for you. Let me share my sound first. Okay. Perfect. Now we will see the video. Is everyone seeing that? Okay.
We are Double Edge, an international theater ensemble based in rural Ashfield, Massachusetts. We are an ensemble and company of interdisciplinary artists called to create the highest vibrancy of art in deep dialogue with the communities where the work takes place. We call this living culture. At the core of our work is our art. Double Edge creates performances that are visual, visceral, dreamlike, mythic, and intimate. Our aesthetics celebrate imagination, flight, and the human potential. Our indoor performances tour around the US and overseas. Double Edge also performs indoor-outdoor traveling spectacles across our farm in Ashfield. These larger-than-life spectacles take place in pastures, streams, gardens, and under the starry sky, and immerse the spectator in mythic storytelling. Our training is an original performance creation methodology. It is how we grow ourselves, as well as the next generation of artists. Our training is physical, musical, visual, vocal, and encourages one to go beyond personal limits. This work extends into our work with youth and education across rural and urban communities. Double Edge was founded in 1982 as a feminist theater by Stacy Klein in Boston. Today, Double Edge is a company of over 20 artists and staff members who hail from Ashfield to Argentina and beyond. In 1994, Double Edge moved to Ashfield to the former Fitzgerald family dairy farm. Today, the farm is our center for 4 seasons of performance, collaboration, training, and exchange with our community. We make art, we farm, we teach, and we gather community members and artists from around the world. We believe that the interaction between artists and community creates a living and vibrant culture capable of transforming society. This begins in our hometown of Ashfield, a small, rural, one-time dairy farming community in western Massachusetts. From farmers to artists to stonemasons to musicians, our collaborations run far and wide, and the border between art and life is porous. For 25 years, Double Edge and our town of Ashfield have been helping each other to grow and evolve. We not only do this in Ashfield, but in rural, urban, and far-flung communities worldwide. We see the power of art to transform community. We began small, with as little as 45 people attending 3 nights of our first summer spectacle in 2001, to 1,000 in 2008, to 5,000 in 2018, to today, at home and on tour, as many as 10,000 spectators experience and are touched by our work. From the social fabric to the economic, our impact on the life of our community has grown while we have. Over the years, as our budget has grown, so has our impact on revenue and job creation. From youth retention to contributing to a sense of place, we see ourselves as a model for vibrant, arts-driven community development. If you put a pin on the map for all the places we have touched, from spectacles to indoor performances to training workshops, and all the places our students have come from to work with us, you can see Double Edge's impact is local, national, and global. Our vision is to create living culture through an art justice lens and restoring a sense of justice to our society through the power of artistic and cultural dialogue. From Okiteu to increasing access to our performances and training, to greening and healing our planet, we are growing our impact. Join us in creating a living culture.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, wow. It's intense to be here. I'm a little nervous, although I'm a performer, 40 years performing. So I want to thank you, Eddie Torres, and the Grantmakers in the Arts for this unique opportunity. Who have dreamed, back in Argentina during the dictatorship, that I was going to be sitting here talking to you all. Well, here I am. Thank you, Caroline Buller, Natalia Linares, Marina Lopez, whom we've been working, Art.Coop. We've been working now for probably 3 or 4 years. I don't know, I can't remember now, but a long time. And we did other things aside from this. It could start in many ways, but The Village is a story of love and desire. And what a better way to start this than to tell you all that 8 days ago, we received a newborn. It's about the 9th kid that is born in the frame of this community. Akiva, Judith, Eaton, and the oldest now is about 42, and he lives in Buenos Aires. And we have a range of kids that they're still working with us, and it speaks about our intergenerational makeup. So what I'm trying to tell you today is not a story. It's not a simple story. It's a complex story, and I'm not going to try to make it simple for us to understand. Rather, I want to, like with that video and with what I'm about to tell you, I want to invite you all to join us. But over time, I was doing this before with Eddie, Daniel, Marina. I want you to come and to see, because there's so much to talk about this, and there are so many things I won't be able to say. The Village was funded by a group of women. Stacy Klein was the leader as a feminist theater, because they were feeling in Boston back in 1982 that there was no room for leading roles in theater for women as directors, as playwrights, performers. I don't think things have changed that much, but there has been improvements, but I think we're still, and look at me, I mean, a man, cisgender, for those that cannot see, in my 60s, with a picture of Quixote in the back, which is always with me. Quixote has been with me since I was 15. But they funded this, and we're working towards this. And the other thing that was a really important impulse is that we wanted to create art in the highest art form possible. We wanted to become a professional company, but not in the conditions of the theater and the way the theater is being produced, and like Marina was saying earlier, marketed. So we decided to lean towards the path of solidarity and cooperation and to support each other. It was very elemental, from renting rooms together to then finding this amazing land where we landed. This land in Western Massachusetts, we have 100 acres, is the unceded land of the Nipmuc people. Now, this land acknowledgement for us is not the end of the line. The end of the line is, what is the action that follows a land acknowledgement? And for us, we went and we talked to the communities, and they said, we would really need a place, an autonomous place where we could have a cultural center for our youth. And we invested a lot of effort and money that was not received from granting, but from us, again, a cooperative effort. And in one of our buildings, we have the honor and the pleasure, today they had a meeting, to house Oquiteo Cultural Center. Some members of the Nipmuc community are living with us in some of our buildings. So, I mean, these are all steps and actions that stem from that beginning moment of us actors realizing that we wanted to own, and we wanted to develop our own creation, and also to be able to create not over 4 weeks, like in the theaters. And then, you rehearse 4 weeks, you perform 4 weeks, and that's that. That we wanted to develop over 3-4 years. And that's what it takes us to create a performance. So when you see all those performances, it's years of work The company is comprised of people that the average of the company right now is around 10 years. So we have people that came in 10 years ago. We have somebody from the Anishinaabe Cultural Exchange who's performing with us. She's 1 year ago, but some of us has been here for 25 years, 40 years. So the average is around 10 years. We, in this attempt, we're also learning and understanding the benefits of long-term work, something that is not really considered in a transactional type of society where things move so fast. So when we realized that we need to train ourselves. So we developed this unique training methodology that we teach. We have had 800 students over the last 15 years. Some of them have created their own enterprises, their own cooperative work in Detroit, even in Beijing, some people in India, in South Africa. So we're receiving people from Uruguay, from Argentina, from everywhere. The training is visceral, it's physical. Yes, it could be considered like a workout, but it's our attempt to fly. So we do a lot of, and you saw it in the video, we put the community on bungee cords, we climb rock, we do rock climbing, we do this and that. We're trying to fly, but we're also trying to fly in other ways with imagination, the power of imagination, which then this gets somehow, it perspires to the community. We had created two types of performances, and we had created many performances over time. One is indoors, that took us all over the world. We performed at the Meyerhold Center in Moscow, at the Arena Stage in DC, at the Paramount in Boston. And the other type of performance, and you can see, I gave you a link, one of the films at Montclair, peak performances is art and all arts. And we also perform outdoors, which is something that maybe I brought from my traditions of Mardi Gras, and my learning of Mardi Gras when I was in Argentina. That we incorporated, and we are still incorporating all these things into our arts. These outdoor performances are traveling performances. The audience are immersed in a world. You saw a little bit of the images in the video, and it's an immersion. What the immersion does is create a sense of belief. We immerse ourselves first, but then when the audience immerse themselves and they walk with us, well, I remember finishing a Quixote performance up in the pastures, and the lights go out. The lights come back into the audience, which are also in the pasture, and to see them standing next to somebody they didn't know. And they didn't have a sense of where they were because they had been walking in the dark for an hour and a half, and feel that deep sense of joy that they had afterwards. We realized this is really, there is a craving for this. So what happened, you saw it in the numbers, it's we didn't get to the 10,000s of today because of COVID, but we were aiming and we were very close to get there. I don't know how far I am from my 10 minutes, but I want to give you a sense of where we're leading to. So we're putting all this training that we developed into action with our own community and with other communities, and we're starting partnerships. One partnership is with Jupiter Performance Studios from Harlem. They have been working, and now we're also in a partnership with the Black National Theater to create this new work that they're creating. Another partnership is with the Theater Offensive from Boston, which is a LGBTQ people of color organization from Boston. What we are managing to do, and then this happens during COVID, is that we realize that with resilience, we could reshape our way of producing. And what we needed to do is that we have room here, and we started housing people and creating housing out of the barns. So we went immediately during COVID, we went to build little apartments everywhere. And we're housing people that they just come, like the director of the Theater Offensive is in residency here permanently. We have 2 or 3 Nipmuc craftsmen and artists that are living at the farm. So this is we are also giving the support of organization that we learn with our training, and we are also giving our training, and we are then learning from them a myriad of things. It's amazing. The exchange that is happening here is amazing right now. We're creating a new solar system that will get us off the grid. It's a solar farm. We have all the funding for that. We're working onto that. We're creating food systems, land back. As we said, we have an agreement, a shared residences and nutrition. I think I'm going to leave it there, and I'll be open to questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos. It's so amazing. I was talking to Carlos this week and I said, I can't wait. Next time I come to the East Coast, I want to visit. Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, the breadth of Double Edge is incredible. And I love hearing about some of the projects you're working on. I'm wondering if you, like what kind of support, you mentioned that the solar project is funded, but some of the other work, what kind of support are you looking for to support that work?
Well, something that I didn't mention is that we are having this magical idea of creating. We have a piece of land that we share with the Nipmuc people, and we are thinking about building longhouses to bring the kids that are they're in trouble now in the inner cities here to do wampum workshops, to work with leathers and stuff like that, but also to live here over time, to take them out and to also give them, because one thing, let me say this really briefly. The other day I was reading about aesthetics, and I always thought that aesthetic was related to beauty and harmony, but then all of a sudden I was reading the origin of the word in Greek, and aesthetic is about senses. So the opposite of aesthetics is anesthetic, is to not feel. So to bring these kids here to feel the land, to feel themselves and to immerse themselves, again, an immersion is phenomenal. So money to build these long houses would be phenomenal. We need staff because it's growing, and I don't have time to deal with everybody that wants to come here. So we are like, somebody's told us once, you're creating something that you're not going to be able to manage. Well, that's true. So right now it's sort of spilling everywhere. I just got a call from the Venice Biennale to go perform at the Venice Biennale. I was like shocked, like I never imagined this, but I don't know if we can do that.
Amazing, thank you. Do other folks have questions that they'd like to ask? We will also have some time at the end of the session to open it up for questions. People are feeling shy. Cool. Well, yeah, maybe think about what questions you might have for the work that Double Edge Theater is doing, and we can, there's a question from Ted. Do you have a Kickstarter for the Venice Biennale? Ted wants you to
go. Ted, right? I think I need to start that. We're very good at grassroots fundraising. This year it was amazing, the support, and also this was something that happened during COVID that a lot of people started turning into. But yes, Kickstarter could be a good idea.
I'm in. You got a pledge from Oakland, California. I'm in, man. Do it, brother.
Thank you. I will.
Amazing. Thank you, Ted. We have a question from Abe who says, most artist cooperatives are producer cooperatives. Do you see potential for worker cooperatives for artists to do not produce their works collaboratively?
Can you repeat the end of that?
Yeah. Do you see potential for worker cooperatives for artists that do not produce their works collaboratively?
Yes. I mean, it's like the commons, you know, we have been working with David Bollier in this idea of the commons. You need to grab the aspects that you can cooperativize. You don't need to make, I think I'm addressing this properly. You don't need to aim for the whole cooperative all the time. It happens, it would happen, but you can start by little pieces. Let's say, let's promote this together. Or that's a little experiment of a cooperative. I think that one of our problems as a society is that we are trained to try to grab everything all together at one time. And I think we need to do steps. And that's why I think training is so important, because it takes away the anxiety of developing a product and a result. So, you know, I see a myriad of, and Daniel can talk more about this also, because I think he's very knowledgeable about cooperatives. I've been in cooperatives since, I don't know, 1975. So yes, I mean, there's all kinds of, I've been in workers' cooperatives too, yes.
Amazing, thank you. And Sierra, I see your question, and let's hold it for the end of the session so that we can have some time with Daniel, who will share a little bit more about cooperatives, creative cooperative. Daniel Park, everyone, from Obvious Agency. I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome, thanks. I was also just sharing some more info for Abe in the chat. Yeah, hi y'all. It's hard to follow up the Venice Biennale, but I'll do my best. So my name's Daniel Park. I use he, him pronouns. I'm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Lenape-Hoking. Yeah, I'm here to talk to you all today about Obvious Agency. Some of you, I'm like very used to the philanthropy world as a consultant, as an expert, as a facilitator. This is actually my first ever opportunity getting to present my work to funders as just an artist, though. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Let me get my screen share going on real quick. Bam. So, yeah, so Obvious Agency. A little bit about us. We are a worker-owned cooperative. We're a startup cooperative. We've been around for about 5 or 6 years now. We are one of, if potentially not the only, theater or performance-based worker-owned cooperative in the United States at the moment. I've tried to do some research and I haven't found much else for ensembles that consider themselves worker-owned co-ops. There are 3 worker owners of the co-op currently, who you can see in the middle of this picture here. The first is myself in the bottom left corner. Next up is Joseph Ahmed in the top left corner, and Ariana Gass in the top right. We're the 3 founding members and worker owners of the co-op. And then there in the bottom right in the center is Kat Ramirez, who is our first ever worker owner in training, and who, assuming things go as we think they will be joining us as a new worker owner just a little bit later this month. The other folks here in this picture are just a handful of the artists that we've worked with over our about 5 to 6 years of being in existence. Most of them are Philly-based artists. Some of them are organizers, leaders in the community, and I'll sort of talk to you a little bit more about how we've engaged with them in a little bit. I had all of this stuff written up, and then I realized, you know, I just need to tell a couple stories. So one of the first stories that I want to tell you all is actually a story of Ariana's, but I think it really informs the work that we do. So we're an interactive performance company. We originally came together because Joe, Ariana, and myself were really interested in how do games and performance like intersect? What does that look like? And the reason for that is because games are just systems, right? You can think of a game as an equation. You put in a unique input, and there's going to be a unique output at the very end, right? I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So Ariana, when she was an undergrad, she was working, her thesis project was about Sleep No More, right? That big punch-drunk show that maybe it's still happening in New York, maybe it's not, I don't know. I'm guessing a lot of folks here have maybe seen it in some iteration. But it's a big immersive thing. It's a big installation. You're following actors around and they're touching you, and it's so exciting, right? And so Ariana was seeing this show like multiple times a week in order to work on her thesis project. And at one point, she's seeing the show, and in one of the rooms, in one of the installations, one of the performers has scissors and a book and is cutting up that book. That like bit of the performance ends, the performer leaves the room, most of the rest of the audience that's there leaves the room, and Ariana decides to stay because you can just wander. The scissors are there on a chair, there's a big pile of books, and so Ariana goes over, picks up the scissors, and starts cutting up the books. And immediately one of the stage managers comes over and says, oh, please don't do that. And so for us, this question is, well, you showed us what to do, you gave us all the tools to do it, you created this immersive world, quote unquote, that you want us to inhabit, and yet you don't actually want us to participate. You want us to continue to be passive observers to the artistic experience that you have created for us, right? That rubs us the wrong way. We're not here to encourage audiences to be passive observers of the world around them. We are here to encourage audiences to take part in the world. Our name, Obvious Agency, comes from the fact that through all of our work, we want your agency in your life, in the world, in our society to be obvious. We want you to deal with the questions and the limitations of that. We want you to deal with why there might be limitations on your agency and your ability to self-determine. And while sort of becoming a worker co-op was almost coincidental for us, it's actually pretty perfect, right? Because worker cooperatives and cooperation in general is about, right, shared ownership, is about shared participation, right? And so it's essentially, it comes down to democracy, right? And so our work is all deeply participatory. We can't rehearse our work without an audience, without people to test it out. You can rehearse or perform a play with no audience and kind of know what's going to happen, where people might laugh, et cetera, et cetera. We have no idea at all what is going to happen until we get an audience in there, and we're always doing that very early on and regularly throughout our processes. So Obvious Agency has two branches for our work. We have our fee-for-service branch, which includes creating commissions for cultural institutions, particularly institutions who are interested in bringing in new audiences or interested in engaging existing audiences in new ways. We do education work. We love sharing our pedagogy with other artists, or actually our methodology with other artists. We love sharing it with young people, teaching workshops at colleges and that kind of thing. And then we also consult with other artists who are interested in creating interactive work, but are maybe new to that work, right? Unlike most worker co-ops, and this has actually been a struggle for us in terms of getting access to resources in the worker co-op world, while we are aiming for a profit, ultimately what's important to us is that we can be a site of sustainable and dignified jobs for our artists. We're not here for growth for the sake of growth, right? That's not what we're aiming for. We want to be reasonable about the size and scale and scope of what we're trying to achieve. And ultimately what defines that is, what does it take to make the art that we want to make and to support the artists, both ourselves as worker owners, but then also the freelance artists that we're working with regularly, to make sure that everybody is making a thriving wage, right? And also building wealth over time, especially because we are primarily working with artists of color and trans artists, both through our worker owners as well as the artists that we collaborate with who aren't necessarily worker owners in the company. And so all of that fee-for-service work is ultimately in service of that goal, right? And making sure that we can produce our artistic work also while being less reliant on philanthropy and individual giving. As I am sure you all know, the winds of philanthropy change often and quickly, and it's not very easy for artists to rely on that funding. Just for context, we have only ever received like 2 real grants from philanthropy. They've been about $500 each. Our operating budget for the last year was about $10,000. So that tells you also a little bit of the scale that we're working at versus Carlos. And I'll talk a little bit more sort of about that business model a little bit later on. I want to talk to you all, though, a little bit about the art that we make. And so I'm going to start by sharing with you just some information about our commission work through an example. So I'm going to show you a video in just a minute, but this project was called Barnes Jaunt. It was commissioned by the Barnes Foundation here in Philadelphia. I don't want to get too much into the details and context of it, but I think the important things to know are that Barnes Foundation is in many ways a very traditional arts institution. It is pretty difficult to access for people who are not like deep in the art world, and for people who are not necessarily huge fans of modernist work. Because of their sort of pedagogy, I would say, they don't provide almost any information about the art that they have on display for folks. So you're just looking at the world's largest collection of Cezannes and not really understanding what is that about, what does this mean? There's a lot of alienation going on. And so for this project, we wanted to revisit the actual radical origins of why the foundation was created in the first place. So I'm gonna just show you a little bit of a video so you can get a sense of that project.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Amazing. You just embodied the spirit of this room.
Okay? We are cousins. You might be my cousins. I don't know. You can tell me how you related. But we're gonna go inside. We're gonna get pieces of our family together because we didn't grow up together, okay? I didn't even know we could elevate, okay?
I'm sorry. You're finding a piece that you created when you were a child.
When I was little, I loved animals. I loved all animals. And those geese were my best friends. Bonnie.
Oh.
And what was my other goose's name? My gander. Cecil.
Cecil.
And Bonnie.
So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings,
Yes, Jesus.
you're gonna rise up singing. You ready? It's this one. And which one on your drawing is it? The bottom, is it the bottom left?
Yeah.
Bottom left?
I see that now.
Great. So in case it wasn't clear, essentially what we did for the project was we brought in a bunch of like lefty, queer organizers, activists, art makers, leaders, folks of color, who we sort of defined as undeniably Philly. And they were giving they had literally a single 1-hour orientation and then gave tours of the collection as if they were experts on it, and encouraged and invited audience members to participate in their lie making and their storytelling about where did this collection come from, why is it here, what does it all mean, right? So it's this hyper populist interpretation of this very sort of traditionally inaccessible collection. That's Barnes' job. Our more recent work, right, and this is kind of bridging the divide between our sort of artistic not-for-profit work and then our for-profit fee-for-service commission work, is Care Package, or Care About Each Other package. This was our most recent work of ours. In the left-hand side here, you can see actually an example of one of the pieces that was created. The top left image, you can see the box that the pieces came in. You can see some of the pack-ins that came from other performing artists who had picked up craft hobbies during the pandemic or started their own craft businesses, as well as some other artifacts from other local companies that we cooperated with in order to bring this project together. But this was our first time creating a physical product. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to see, can we actually create a meaningful piece of art that can also be profitable for us over an extended period of time. Again, we're always looking for how can we ultimately find ourselves self-sustaining and not reliant on philanthropy or individual giving in order to fund our artwork, right? So this was just a question of, can we open up another revenue stream for ourselves? Part of what was really important for us in that process, though, was so we collaborated with 10 local Philadelphia artists for that project. Some of those faces you saw on that first slide. We do a lot of collaboration, as you can tell. It didn't feel right to us for the company to potentially be bringing in this ongoing source of revenue, but to only have paid those artists that we were working with once. And so the model that we set up for ourselves here was for once we made back, recouped our initial sales, for every $300 we brought in profit, we split that down the middle with the 10 participating artists. So they would each get a check for $150, and the company would get the remaining $1,500 to spend on further materials, and then ultimately decide what we want to do with that money. That's not limited just to the sales for this project. It's also, we are working with the Painted Bride here in Philly later this year and presenting an installation version of this. So even that funding is going to this, right? Because we wanted to recognize that we would not be able to make this work without the artists who contributed to it. So it didn't make sense for us to only pay them once for that work, while also recognizing that we were taking on the major financial risk for this project. It was not grant funded. It was completely self-funded, as most of our work tends to be at this point. And so what we did was we presented them an initial proposal of, hey, here's a business model. How do you feel about this? We gathered their input, telling them up front, like, we will ultimately be making the decision here because we are the ones who own all of the risk. But we got a big thumbs up. People felt so special and excited about it. We pay all of our collaborating artists a minimum of $25 an hour for their work. And we often hear from folks that that is the most meaningful paycheck that they've ever received. We don't do stipends. We ask people to record their hours so that things like memorizing lines or working on little bits of pieces and extra work here and there, that's all included, right? We don't want to be underpaying artists. That is incredibly antithetical to what we do. So we're still exploring with this and seeing where it leads us. Our most recent project was Main Menu. Sorry, not our most recent. Our project in 2020 was Main Menu. I'm sure lots of folks here have had to call like Amtrak or airlines or your bank or an insurance company and dealt with the annoying, awful phone menus that you have to deal with there. Some that like use voice recognition these days. So those menus are called interactive voice response systems. Main Menu was inspired from Joe's experience after his mom had passed away, having to call banks, having to call insurance companies, having to call all of these different bureaucratic institutions to close out his mom's accounts and deal with all of the fallout of his mother passing away, right? And as you can expect, that process was incredibly inhumane. So the sort of experience of Main Menu, it was a performance for one person at a time over the phone. If you can believe it, we actually started developing it before the pandemic, but it didn't come, but we produced it in the fall of 2020. So we found ourselves sort of very well positioned in that moment. But audience members would call in. Ariana was playing Annie, this interactive voice response system who was designed to solve all of life's problems. And so the idea was that players were navigating this sort of wild phone menu of options to tell Annie about their problems in life so that Annie could help them help themselves, more or less. Ultimately, while we sort of started with this very human story of Joe's, a lot of what we were looking at was this question of what type of labor is better held by humans versus non-humans, the inhumane treatment of call center workers, and we were envisioning both utopic and apocalyptic forms of customer care. If you look on the right, we were running the program, our script, in a program called Twine. So that is just a small segment of what the actual script looked like. So as you can see, we call ourselves, we do theater work, but you know, it's not quite the theater that a lot of folks are used to. Just a little bit of information more about some of our other projects real quick. Go to Sleep was really our first big sort of just artistic presentation that we did. It was a real world walking simulator slash adventure game about Ariana's experience with insomnia. And Marina can drop some links to all of these if you're interested. The Diamond Eye Conspiracy was our first big commission where players invaded the Samuel Paley Library of Temple University because there was a secret organization taking advantage of students with a large amount of financial debt. And there were diamonds hidden inside of the stacks of the library. That was super fun to do. We were doing it during finals week, so we got to like bring a little bit of joy and levity to a library filled with students cramming. And then We Need to Talk was sort of a proto work of ours that was a tabletop role-playing game about healthy breakups. And if you're interested in playing that game yourself, Marina's going to drop the link as well so that you can download the zine that has all the instructions and pieces that you would need to practice having a healthy breakup with somebody. So then this great question that Marina asked Carlos, how you all can help, where do we need support? So like I said, we're pretty small, all things considered. We've been able to do some really amazing things and have some really beautiful contact with other artists and impact on the audiences who get to participate in our work. And it's not sustainable anymore for us. All three of our worker owners have full-time jobs in order to support ourselves. All of us continue to provide sweat equity to the company. We meet every 3 weeks for at least 2 hours, more than that sometimes, plus all of the projects that we're working on. We need to build up our infrastructure so that this work can be sustainable for us. We need to build up an infrastructure so that we can actually test our business model and see if it works or make tweaks for ourselves. And we need to build up our infrastructure so that all of this work that we're doing, we can actually achieve it. Right now, having to constantly switch back between trying to create an infrastructure for our company based around a worker co-op model, but that really fits us, and producing artwork, it just doesn't work. We can't hold on to a single thread. So in 2022, we're hoping to raise about $100,000 in order to help us build that infrastructure. A major part of that is going to be hiring at the very least part-time staff, if not also full-time staff, in order for us to really be able to see these projects through, right? We want to be able to get to the point where we can support people in communities in the way Double Edge does, but we can't do that without nothing. And unfortunately, the way that grants for worker co-ops are set up, the way that most grants for arts are set up, and the way that loans for worker co-ops are set up, we're oftentimes not eligible for any of that funding at the moment. So we really have to focus on building networks and connections of people who can help us figure out a model that's actually going to work to get that startup cash that we need. Additionally, we do have a company retreat coming up very soon, March 7th to 12th. We had some miscommunication with our local funder, so we were hoping to work on a $15,000 budget for that. Currently, it's a $2,000 budget, so we're really making it happen on a shoestring. But if anybody here can support that and would be down, please, please, please reach out. We would love that. And then the other thing for folks who are really particularly interested in supporting the art making, we're working on a project that's currently titled Space Opera. I'm the lead artist on the project. And it's an exploration of how people at the individual and group level create and are impacted by change over time. We're really inspired by the graphic novel Saga by Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan, this tabletop role-playing game called Legacy Life Among the Ruins by Minerva McJanda, and then of course Star Wars, the like best known space opera. But ultimately, we think it'll come out either late 2023 or maybe sometime in 2024, more likely. But what we're envisioning is that this is a 4 to 5 week process where once a week for a full day, participants come, they are fed, and they participate in interstellar conflict. They are regular, everyday people who are impacted by interstellar conflict and don't even know it yet. They are the people who are making those major decisions. They're going to form different communities, each with their own unique sort of systems, cultures, beliefs, but then also mechanics to play those out. It's going to be big. We are really in this sort of amazing adolescent moment where we're ready to grow, but we're not able to do that without getting the support in order to have the capacity to actually make this change. So yeah, that's a little bit about this obvious agency. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Daniel, Carlos. Thank you. You know, we're at time. We're at the hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm able to stick around for a few if you're able to stick around for a few, because I wanted to open it up in case folks had questions for either Daniel or Carlos.
Hey everybody, my name is Robert Smith. I'm with the Surdna Foundation. Really excited to be here and excited to meet the folks from Art.Coop, I think in a meeting tomorrow. So I look forward to that. And for Daniel and Carlos, I mean, I'm curious about the process from becoming, you know, a stranger to becoming a worker owner in training to becoming a full worker owner. What are the requirements for that participation, either financially or in any other way?
Yeah, we're still figuring that out. CAT is sort of an experimental process for us. The sort of base ground lines that we've currently set are folks need to have worked with us on at least one other production in some kind of capacity, so we have a sense of how we work together. And then we have an 8-month training and orientation period where folks attend our company meetings. Their input is gathered on major decisions, but they don't necessarily have a voting stake yet. They have a buddy to help orient them and keep them sort of like help catch them up to the company. And then after 8 months, we do an evaluation. We ask them, are you still interested? And what questions or concerns do you have for us? We respond to those and ask them a couple questions and let them know if we're interested. And assuming everybody says yes, what we've decided is that the buy-in for the company is $250. We wanted to keep it something meaningful, but low and accessible. And we are also totally fine if people do that as a payment plan, if they take that out of some of their future paychecks and that sort of thing. Also recognizing that our current worker owners have not necessarily actively paid that much into a fund, but because of the sweat equity that we've put in, and because a lot of us have oftentimes said, I don't need this pay right now, I want to put it back into the company, we've recognized that. And we really want to start building patronage accounts for ourselves in that process too.
Thank you so much. And I'm not sure if Carlos wanted to answer that as well.
Yeah, I wanted to say that we don't ask people to pay. Everybody gets paid, but it's more about an investment of time and a commitment to living here. Just living in Ashfield is a leap for anybody. And then to accept physical training and physical work. And then over time, getting to different levels. What we try to secure is the basic standard needs. So we have housing, we provide food, we have a food system program for ourselves. I'm part of that. So because we do the farming as well, we have land to farm. So we could farm and we work with other cooperatives around. But then the progress or the development is up to each individual according to what they see they want to do in life, how they want to manifest their creation.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Great presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I've included in the chat a hyperlink to a Google Doc in case you want to share your information with Carlos and Daniel. We're going to be sharing all the information they've shared, plus a little more in an email by tomorrow. I want to say a great big thank you to Carlos and Daniel for sharing these stories. This is really important. You're talking about really deep sustainability in terms of supporting artists over the long term. This is the kind of thing that so many of us only dream about. So thank you so much for your work and for your example. Also wanted to say a great big thank you to Marina Lopez at Art.Coop. And I also wanted to say thank you to Caroline Woolard and Natalia Linares at Art.Coop. This has been really Art.Coop's hard work around all of this. And I wanted to wrap up by saying thank you to our Vice President, Nadia Alokta, and our Senior Program Manager, Sherilyn Seeley, who has introduced GIA to solidarity economy work so long ago and is responsible for all of this coming together in this way. Carlos, Daniel, Marina, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I'm so looking forward to talking with you again.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you.
Thanks so much, y'all.
Thank you.